We welcome back, on that note, Morten and Bénédicte, and we introduce Per von Zelowitz, who is from the New York Innovation Center at the New York Fed. They are connecting more dots for us. So we've had dots before, but this time these dots are FMIs, financial market infrastructures. So Bénédicte and Per and Morten, over to you.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you for the kind introduction again. So for the BIS, tokenization, like AI, represent a transformative innovation or new technology to improve the old, but also enable the new. And we've seen it can pave the way for new arrangements for cross-border payments, security settlements, and bond markets and beyond. And I also think after many false starts, we are seeing tokenization initiatives more and more in the private sector, such as money market funds, bonds, ETFs, loans, and securitization, tokenized deposits, and of course, stable coins. So in this session, however, we will focus on public sector tokenization. We will explore 3 initiatives in the BIS Innovation Hub. And you can kind of see the things that we're doing really falls into 3 groups. So reimagining existing arrangement, exploring new arrangement, and upgrading financial instruments. And we'll focus on Genesis, Promissa, and Pine in this session. So Genesis is around tokenizing sovereign green bonds. Promissa is a platform that tokenizes paper-based instrument that the World Bank used to finance themselves. And Project Pine was looking at the role of tokenization in potentially enhancing open market operations by central banks. Bénédicte will kick us off, then I will speak on Project Genesis. I will speak a bit about Promissa, and then over to Per. And Per also have the very honorable role of tying it all together in the end, and maybe perhaps even look to the future. So over to you, Bénédicte.
So thank you very much. So I'm glad to present to you Project Genesis. In fact, Project Genesis was one of the Hub's first projects, and it was the first tokenization exploration focused on sovereign bonds. The project was framed and started in 2021, when tokenization, you could say, was still at its inception stages. In fact, the term tokenization of real-world assets that you hear a lot of people talk about now, in which bonds fall into, did not even exist, had not seen the light of day. However, the benefits of fractionalization were touted very early on in the days of crypto, as early as the birth, you could say, of Bitcoin, and later with the onset of ICOs on Ethereum. And somehow innovation takes root quite early in Asia. So to my surprise, when I looked in 2021, in fact, the Thai and the Philippine governments were already testing the implementation of tokenized sovereign bonds. So looking at this, we definitely thought that tokenization could improve fractionalization. But we saw the benefits beyond that. We thought that through the combination with smart contracts and programmability, we could also go a step further in terms of, for example, monitoring and end-to-end automation. And I'll come to this later. Our stakeholder group, as with the other project I presented, was very large, and it consisted at the time of what I call the tokenization and the green finance aficionados. So what did we learn? The first project, or the first iteration of Genesis, which we call Genesis 1.0, was focused on the retail use case, with the focus being on the fractionalization of the bonds. So in sum, you can do the placement in much smaller denominations. And we combined this with end-to-end digitization. So the first end-to-end digitization we looked at, a key friction in day-to-day finance is the onboarding process and the so-called KYC. We automated the KYC in two means. One, through connection to a new government database that was nascent in Hong Kong. Also in Singapore, there was a similar database. In Hong Kong, it is called I Am Smart. And secondly, for those who do not want to be connected to a government database, those who treasure their privacy, we also offered a private sector automated KYC onboarding solution that was near instant, that had been piloted in the crypto sector, but in Hong Kong was already adopted by the neobanks, the online banks. In addition to that, while it was early days in 2021, we decided to not just look at permission-based ledgers, but also at public blockchains. And so the two prototypes that you can see if you look at the report, one of them was built on a public blockchain, and at the time, Stellar was chosen. Now, 5 years on, it's only taken 5 years, and a lot of the capital markets instruments are actually piloting being placed on public blockchains as opposed to on permission-based ledgers. I would note the other prototype was built on a permission-based ledger. And then finally, we also explored another element that even today is still highly topical. The question of whether payment could be done via an RTGS connection or whether it better be done in digital cash, which could be in the form of central bank digital cash or in the form of stable coins. And all were deemed possible. The second iteration of Genesis then went into an institutional direction, from the retail direction to an institutional direction. And this was as a result of our collaboration with the UN. And in particular, there was a challenge around funding for projects in the Global South by funds in the Global North. In this type of a context, there is often distrust, and in particular, a risk of greenwashing. So we saw the opportunity there of using blockchain to be an immutable ledger, in this case of carbon credits generated, that through smart contracts could be delivered as coupons for the bonds payments. 5 years on, we have seen this concept also come back in quite some of our endeavors. So Genesis was followed by an actual implementation by the HKMA, as Eddie has explained. In fact, the HKMA did several government green bonds. Some of them, as he said, were very early stage, and there were many challenges in the placement, but it enabled early learning. And as I mentioned, we also rekindled the concept of the interlinkage between IoT devices, blockchains, tokenization, and even AI in the context of at least two tech sprints that we run, one with the UAE in the context of COP27, and the other in the context of the Brazilian G20 presidency last year. In some, these were early stage use cases that eventually I think will come to market. And now I pass it to my colleagues to go through two more early use cases.
Thank you, Bénédicte. So Project Promissa. So what is Project Promissa and why did we do it? So it turns out, I didn't know this a couple of years ago, but governments finance the World Bank and all other multilateral development banks via paper-based promissory notes. And the management of that and the recognition process is very time-consuming and even cumbersome. And so what did we build? Well, we're using DLT or blockchain technology. We tokenized these promissory notes and put them on a blockchain. And we built a prototype that we tested it with global partners. And how? Really this thing, the interesting thing is really that what they don't have today is now they have a common shared source of truth where everybody can see what goes on. And then we were able to automate a lot of the workflows using so-called smart contracts. The project group was the BIS Innovation Hub, the World Bank, and the Swiss National Bank, and the IMF participated as an observer. Not that we need to go into very much detail around promissory notes, but I'd just like to just highlight a few points. So there's the Promissa, that's usually the Minister of Finance. That's the one that issues the promissory note, so promising to pay, say, the World Bank X billion over the next 3 years. The promisee would then be the World Bank, the receiver of the promissory note. The promissory note would be held in custody by the central bank in its role as the bank for the government. And the central bank often also serves as the payment agent, so the one that actually pays out the promises. And so when the World Bank needs money, they send an email, message, fax, whatever, to the Minister of Finance requesting payment. Another message then goes to the central bank that then actually takes out this paper-based instrument of its wall, flips it on the other side, updates the principal, a stamp, 2 signatures, stick it back into the wall, and then actually effects the payment to the World Bank. So the processes were very manual, paper-based, and we were able to put that into a digital format. So we went straight to blockchain, so we kind of skipped the step that many other dematerialization projects have done. So what did we build? So we built this prototype. We provided all the users with their own personalized user interface where they could see any recent activity. They could see either the promissory notes that they had issued, that they had in custody, or that they were the receivers of. And they could also click and see like the expected payment schedule, so on and so forth. So how did we test it? We tested it with a number of central banks all over the globe. And not only did we do it with the World Bank, we also did it with the Asian Development Bank. And we ran tests throughout all the manual cycles of the management of these promissory notes. What did we learn? DLT works, right? So tokenization can replace paper. Isn't that great? And it can actually cut reconciliation to just a matter of seconds. And we think something that we really enjoyed was really this co-design with the World Bank, the IMF, and also the Asian Development Bank, and the central banks to try and figure out how does these workflow work. And there's small differences across countries, but like trying to get a workflow that works for everyone. And then we figured out that we built it to scale. So once governance and standards are kind of like established, the platform could actually easily be expanded. So that's it, Project Promissa. I turn it over to Per.
Thank you, Morten. And we'll switch over to Project Pine next. And a common theme we've heard about over the past few days is the value of collaboration. And Project Pine is another example of that. Project Pine is a joint research study between the New York Fed's New York Innovation Center and the BIS Innovation Hub Swiss Center. Collaboration has been a principle of the way that the New York Innovation Center works since its inception, and also one of our key success factors. So with Project Pine, as we start all of our New York Innovation Center projects, we focus on what we believe is a high value and important problem or opportunity. So with Project Pine, we assumed that commercial banks and private sector financial institutions will implement tokenization at scale for wholesale payments and securities settlement. And in that future state, central banks may need to also use tokenization and smart contracts in order to deliver their ability to deliver financial and monetary stability. So what did we build with Project Pine? We developed a prototype of a generic monetary policy toolkit, and using tokenization and smart contracts to execute different monetary policy operations. And I'll highlight 2 points in that description. One is this toolkit was generic, so it's not about Federal Reserve monetary policy setup or any other specific central bank, but was really designed to apply to a wide range of central banks around the world, depending on their specific monetary policy approach. I also reference operations. So Project Pine is not about implementing policy decisions. We still leave that up to the governors to decide what the policy should be. But once those decisions are made, we might have the ability to deliver operations in a different way using these new and emerging technologies. So our prototype was designed, among other things, with the ability to pay interest on reserves, and also, for example, create a number of facilities to deliver the operational aspects of monetary policy. So for example, temporarily exchange reserves for collateral and vice versa, swap assets, and also execute sales and purchases of assets. In order to test Project Pine, we used 10 specific use cases that were based on former examples of hypothetical scenarios. These were all simulated, but you can imagine these were different events that happened in the past, such as scenarios including interest rate tightening and easing cycles, quantitative easing and tightening, and also periods of strained market liquidity and other types of disruptions in the financial system. This is a screenshot of the prototype that we built. And what's informative about the image that we have here is that, among other things, we tried to design the ability to visualize the financial system. So the circles and lines that you see there represent different aspects of the Pine prototype and the different capabilities of the prototype. So for example, the little circles that you see there might represent individual smart contracts that could represent different institutions that are trying to execute some aspect of their role given the financial system. The lines that you see connecting the different circles there represent the financial flows that are taking place between the different institutions. So given the 10 scenarios that we tested against, we have the ability again to visualize how this might work given the specifics of the scenarios that we wanted to implement. And if you go from left to right on the slide, you'll see the different columns that represent things like the different institutions. So all the way on the left-hand side, you see the role of the central bank. Then moving over to the right, you have other commercial banks and also the institutions that the commercial banks ultimately serve, but also instruments and assets that might be available in this financial system. So if you're interested, we'd be happy to follow up with you and provide a demo of the prototype as well. So what did we learn from this exercise? Similar to what you heard from Genesis and Promissa, it can be done. So we tested the technology, and the technology works. Again, this is a prototype level of fidelity, so if there was an objective to progress this beyond that point, there's a lot more work to do, but within a research context, it can work. There also might be benefits. So we demonstrated the ability to create facilities in a much more agile and rapid way than is currently done across many central banks. So if there is a financial crisis, speed is often a success factor in trying to address the crisis. So using smart contracts and tokenization in this future state might allow us to move faster and in a more agile approach. It's still very early, so certainly tokenization is happening. There are many examples of that we've heard about over the past 2 days, but it's not at scale yet, and we don't know if it will ever reach scale. But it's still early, and it's appropriate to start to learn more about this, so in the event that it does reach a point of scale, that we're prepared. And finally, there's more to explore. So with Project Pine, we focused really on a domestic oriented use case, so a facility that would be available to a single central bank. And you can imagine there's a number of questions that weren't addressed during Pine that might be interesting to explore in the future. And then finally, why does this matter? Why does this research matter? Why is it important? So again, as we've heard about over the past 2 days, change happens. Things have never been moving faster than they are today, and it's likely it will only accelerate over time. And preparation helps. So we prefer to do the homework before the final exam. And this research really represents an attempt to try and do that. So again, in the event that tokenization really starts to be adopted at scale, some of the research that we're doing now might inform steps we can take in order to address the opportunities that are available to us with these emerging technologies. So with that, I will focus on wrapping up some of the themes that we've heard. So again, thank you, Bénédicte, for helping us understand more about Genesis, and Morten with regards to Promissa. And some of these themes will sound familiar from what we've heard over the past 20 minutes. But with Genesis, Promissa, and Pine, we heard about 3 use cases. But if you think back to the slide with the pie chart at the start of the presentation, there are a number of opportunities that weren't addressed just by these 3 projects or others that were represented there. So the 3 aspects of the pie chart, for example, focused on upgrading financial instruments, reimagining existing arrangements, and also exploring new arrangements. And while these 3 projects address some components within those areas, there's a lot more work potentially to do. On that slide also were referenced projects including Dunbar, Mariana, and Agora in some of those segments. And again, those are just a few examples of opportunities to explore different use cases. The BIS Innovation Hub has a robust portfolio of research. So these are just 6 projects out of many tens of projects that the Innovation Hub has either concluded or are currently working on. But even with this robust portfolio of research, there are many white spaces that still need to be addressed in order for us to have a more comprehensive understanding of the potential of these technologies and the potential of these new value propositions to be brought to market. So again, it's still early and there's lots more work to do. Second really is momentum is building. So stuff is happening. By no means are we at the starting line. We're past the starting line with much of this, but it's still early. We're starting to realize the true value in some of the technologies. So there are services and products that are coming to market at a production level of fidelity. There's real money being used relative to some of these products and services, real clients and customers using them who are capturing value from these. But it's still early days, and there's a lot more work to do to validate the value propositions that might be associated with the use cases that are being tested. And it also takes an ecosystem. So we've heard from Morten and Bénédicte about the value of collaboration, again, with Genesis and Promissa. That was key with regards to Pine also, including the different central bank advisors that were involved in the project. And this is something that's common across almost every BIS Innovation Hub project. So it typically does not pay to conduct this kind of research in a vacuum, but there's tremendous value in working with like-minded partners who can help you understand how to address the problems and opportunities from a number of different perspectives. And then finally, what's next? So we've talked about the white spaces and opportunities to do more. And certainly this list of 3 is not comprehensive, but it's really a starting point. But it's clear that there are some areas where there's still tremendous value, large problems to solve, and large value propositions to validate, to understand, can we deliver the opportunities to the financial system that we think we might be able to deliver. Cross-border payments is a clear example. It's not to say that there isn't a lot of work going on in this area already. There is. Project Agora is another example of a project that's been referenced addressing opportunities in this space, but there's still more to do. We've also heard about multi-asset opportunities. So with Pine, Promissa, and Genesis again, they were all addressing different types of instruments. And that's just a subset of the number of instruments that might be available ultimately with these new emerging technologies. So think about the opportunity to validate multi-asset infrastructures to deliver different types of value propositions. And then finally, a theme that is becoming more and more important, and again, Genesis is an example of a project that has done early work supporting this theme, is the convergence of traditional finance, TradFi, and decentralized finance, DeFi. So we really see opportunities for traditional financial institutions, including central banks, commercial banks, and others, to potentially benefit from some of the decentralized finance infrastructures that have been tested outside of the regulatory perimeter, but are now starting to come into that space. And I think that's clearly a trend that will continue to progress over the future. And again, an opportunity for us to learn a lot more, to understand where are these types of infrastructures relevant or appropriate for the regulated sector, and where might they help us deliver the opportunities to address the problems that we've identified so far. So with that, I will close, but I will also invite everyone who has more interest in these 3 projects and others that the BIS Innovation Hub has been involved with to come up and ask us questions during the coffee break. And we look forward to continuing the conversation with you all.